Hello there, welcome to Coffee with Ken. This is going to be, let me turn this music off. Enough of that intro. This is going to be a video series I'm making. I decided to do a little project recently in which I'm going to brew through all of the coffees in the Starbucks core coffee spectrum, beginning with the lightest roast, each week getting a different one, going all the way to the darkest roast. Like I said, my name is Ken. I'm a shift supervisor and certified coffee master as of recently. And so I decided to do this project to familiarize myself with Starbucks coffees because I've tasted them all plenty of times, I guess, but I've never really enjoyed each one at home. I've kind of stuck with my favorites to enjoy at home, but now I want to really get familiar with each coffee on a more intimate level and invite them into my home and see how well I can get to know them here. And then I decided why not make some videos just in case there's actually anyone out there bored enough to watch me one day getting my coffee nerd on. So, on to the video. Actually, before we move on, one thing, I guess, if you're going to watch these, a couple things I would expect anyone watching to benefit from this. First of all, we'll cover some little mini lessons in each episode dealing with coffee in general. So in addition to tasting the particular coffee and learning about the particular coffee that we're doing that week, I would also like to include little miniature lessons on coffee in general. It could be the history of coffee, processing methods, Starbucks coffees, Starbucks product in particular. Cover a wide variety of things within each episode, focus on one little side fact. So you will learn about that sort of thing, and you will also hopefully get a little bit more of an idea, I guess a little more familiarity with what a lot of the coffee tasting notes mean. So on Starbucks bags and in their advertisements and promotional materials, you'll see descriptors like crisp and smooth and light-bodied or full-bodied or balanced or earthy or spicy, complex. Hopefully I'll be able to kind of give you a better idea if you're not already familiar with what exactly those terms mean, and be able to better taste them in your own coffee when you brew at home yourself. Alright, finally, on to what we're tasting today. So, this right here, Willow Blend, is the lightest coffee in the Starbucks roast spectrum. It's the lightest of the light. Starbucks did not do light roast, which they refer to officially as blonde roast. This is fairly new, within the last year or two, maybe 2 years now. Not quite 2 years. They started doing blonde roast. Prior to that, they only brewed medium and dark, and they didn't even classify them as medium or dark roast coffees. You had bold coffees, which typically were dark roast, but not always. They just didn't use that method of classifying coffees. So the two blonde roast coffees that Starbucks has now, this Willow Blend and Veranda, are very new. And Willow is lighter than Veranda, so we're starting with that one. Willow, by the way, I was reading this note that they had recently on why they named each of the coffee, where the names come from, and or not just the names, but like the packaging. Each of them has a different symbol. So this one obviously went with the willow tree. And it was funny because a lot of the explanations made sense, except for willow, it just kind of said we thought willow trees captured the essence of this coffee. So I wasn't exactly sure what they meant by that. I think it could be that willow trees have a very delicate appearance. You can see on the bag here. That's a drawing of a willow tree, but they kind of have this appearance of being very delicate, which can kind of see how that would correspond to the way willow blend tastes. And so right here I have a cup of willow blend freshly brewed coffee from my pour over. I've been brewing this for the last week or so, really getting familiar with it, and hopefully we'll be able to give you some good descriptors and as I drink it myself. So first of all, let's get into our what's going to be our mini coffee lesson for the day. There's a lot of different ways you can improve the cup of coffee that you're brewing at home. But in the Starbucks world, and I would say this applies generally, there's considered to be four fundamentals of brewing coffee. These are the four basic things that you always want to do if you really want to get a good cup of coffee at home. And those four things are water, proportion, freshness, and grind. Water, proportion, freshness, and grind. If you can remember those four things, you can brew a good cup of coffee. Water meaning two things with water, actually. You want the temperature to be right, just below the boiling point. So whenever I heat up my water on the stove, I'll kind of watch for bubbles to start forming and take it off just before it looks like it's going to start to get to a full boil. And the quality of water. That's not the big thing that people will make a mistake on, is using tap water, which is fine. I mean, it's not like if you use tap water, your coffee is going to be undrinkable. A lot of people do it that way, but if you use filtered water, you're going to get a lot more of the flavors that are supposedly in the bean. A lot of them are going to come out more into that filtered water rather than tap water. The tap water will have things in it that'll tend to mask those flavors. Proportion. You want to use 2 tablespoons of coffee for every 6 ounces of water you have. There's actually scientific studies to back it up that in blind taste tests nationwide and possibly in other parts of the world, I'm not sure if the test only applied to the U.S., but by a large margin, given a blind taste test, people prefer cups of coffee that are brewed at that ratio. 2 tablespoons of ground coffee to 6 ounces of water. Grind, you want to make sure that you have the right grind for whatever method of coffee you're brewing, and it also helps to have a fresh grind. If you have a grinder at home, we'll talk about grinders in another episode, but if you can grind just the amount of coffee that you're using to brew at that moment, that is ideal, because once the coffee's been ground, it starts to lose its freshness a lot faster. And then freshness, of course, I already kind of mentioned that. That's the grind leads into the freshness that you want both your coffee and your grind to be as fresh as possible. Starbucks says to use a bag of whole bean within a week of opening it, and ground coffee within 24 hours of grinding. Okay, so that's your 4 fundamentals. Follow those, and I guarantee you your coffee will improve. You'll start to taste some of the things that we're going to talk about in these episodes. Now, Willow blend. The first thing I like to do, and this is recommended for everyone, is of course smell the coffee. I actually like to smell coffee at all stages of the process. So I like to smell it when it's in the bag. I like to smell it after it's ground. I like to smell it while it's brewing, and smell it in the cup. You get slightly different smells in each of those things, but there's, of course, a commonality that the coffee maintains. And The smell of Willow blend very much reminds me of like if you just took a big handful of freshly mowed grass or something very herbal, grassy like that, and I get a very sweet smell from the Willow. Kind of reminds me of honey a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and smell it in the cup. This is the brewed form. And I still get a lot of the smell of the sweetness, not as much the grassiness as the smell in the whole being out the bag, but definitely the sweetness, definitely the honey aroma remains in the brewed cup to me. So our second step is going to be to taste and actually slurp the coffee. It's recommended that you slurp so that the coffee sprays the entire palate at one time, and you get the coffee into every area of your tongue. Okay, so Willow is, like I said, it's the lightest roast that Starbucks offers, and it has what's known as a high acidity, which is fairly typical for some of the lighter roast coffees. And it also has a very light body, which, by the way, Willow is a blend of African and Latin American coffees. So they use coffees from Africa, particularly East Africa, and coffees from Latin American, the Latin American region. They blend those together, and then they roast these particular beans. Coffees from that region are usually washed. We'll talk about what that means in another episode, but that usually means they're going to have a high acidity. And what that does to a coffee is it gives it citrusy flavor. The taste of it tends to be very bright. It tends to, I don't know, for me, these kinds of coffees tend to alert me as soon as I taste them. It's like my eyes get a little bit wider, I perk up a little bit. It just has that kind of awakening effect. This says crisp and citrus are the two main descriptors that the bag uses. Coffees from Africa will often tend to have citrusy notes. So there's a little bit of a similarity to what you would taste in a citrus fruit, particularly lemon with this one. I don't have anything to pair them with today. I might do that in other episodes, but if you're pairing this coffee with a food, you would want an ideal thing to do would be anything with lemon in it, or just tasting it with the lemon side by side can really help you notice those citrusy, acidic kind of qualities. Now the thing with this one is there are other coffees that have high acidity. This one has a very light body. I'm going to taste it one more time. And the light body usually refers to how the coffee feels in the mouth. Whether it has a light, medium, or heavy body, whether it feels more watery or more syrupy, it can feel light or heavy. It's often compared to a light body is more like feels like skim milk, whereas a heavier body would feel more like whole milk. Heavier bodies, you get more of that creamy texture. This one's definitely light-bodied, and one of the main things that tells me that this is a light-bodied coffee is the flavor does not linger for very long. So with Willow, as opposed to a coffee we'll do later on down the road called Kenya, which is also an African coffee, Kenya has a heavier body, and that acidic, tangy, citrusy quality tends to linger long after you've swallowed the coffee, whereas this one, I don't find that it lingers much at all. swallow the coffee and the taste is pretty much gone. Another word that's often used to describe that quality in a coffee or in other beverages is smooth. So if a beverage doesn't leave much of an aftertaste, it's often said to be smooth. It goes down clean would be another word, or crisp, which is kind of typical for Latin American coffees. That's part of the Latin American qualities coming out there. Willow, while it is not my absolute favorite coffee, over the course of the past week, I've really gotten to know it well. Those sweet qualities definitely come out more and more each time I drink it. It also has just a little bit, the little bit that does linger, I find is kind of an herbal, grassy note. So Willow is surprisingly complex. Complex would be the word used whenever you get multiple sensations when drinking the coffee, and sometimes it can seem to change a little bit as the coffee cools. It can change as you keep drinking it. The things that you taste the first time you drink it may be a little different each time. The way it can taste when you first sip it might taste a little bit different than the notes that linger in the aftertaste. So in a complex coffee like this one, there's all kinds of different things going on, and the more you drink it, the more things like that you'll notice in the coffee. Very, very good. I think that's all I've got to say about Willow Blend. And that'll conclude this episode of Coffee with Ken, brewing through the Starbucks spectrum. And next time we'll be tasting Veranda. So I will see you then.